Hi everybody, I'm Ryan, and today we're going to talk about blue-white control in Standard, which Eli Cassis championed to a pretty great record at the Pro Tour. We're talking about the card choices in the deck, the overall strategy of the deck, and how to play the deck. Let's jump into it. So this is blue-white control. As far as the lands go, we have some pretty exciting stuff going on. First off is Blast Zone. It is a colorless land that comes in untapped. XX and tap it to put X charge counters on Blast Zone, and it enters with a charge counter as well. And you can pay 3 mana and tap it and sacrifice it to destroy each non-land permanent with mana value equal to the number of charge counters on Blast Zone. So it's a land, produces mana, and it is a removal as well. Playing a single Demolition Field, which is a colorless untapped land as well. We can pay 2 mana and tap it to sacrifice it, destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. That land's controller may search a library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield. Then shuffle. You may search a library for a basic land, put a card, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. So great hate against other good lands, like Fountain Port. Fountain Port is, again, the colorless untapped land. You can pay 2 mana, sacrifice a token to draw a card. We can pay 3 mana to pay 1 life, create a 1/1 blue fresh creature token. And you can pay 4 mana and tap it to create a treasure token. So it combos with itself, but also there's some other tokens in this deck. And so it's a great mana dump. It can provide a little bit of a threat. It can provide a mana advantage, and it can provide massive card advantage in a land. Fountain Port is absolutely excellent. Restless Anchorage is our man land. Enters tapped. It produces our colors. And we pay 3 mana until end of turn. Restless Anchorage becomes a 2/3 white and blue bird creature with flying. It's still a land. When it attacks, create a map token, which you can then sacrifice Fountain Port, which is pretty awesome. The overall strategy of this deck as a whole is to stop what your opponent's doing and then provide either a large threat or control everything as you slowly whittle down their life total with the fish, or with Beza or the Overlords, stuff like that. Which means this deck is kind of divided into 3 categories. It's card advantage, it's control, and then it's like threats. So to kind of talk about a bunch of the control cards, Get Lost is our big premium removal. It's a 2 mana instant, destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker's controller creates 2 map tokens. So it's a little bit of a downside, but it's reasonably unconditional, which is really nice. We're playing Change the Equation as a counter spell, 2 mana instant. Counter target spell of mana value 2 or less, or counter target red or green spell of mana value 6 or less. Standard's pretty low to the ground right now, and so Change the Equation is pretty good against most decks and has targets against every deck. Playing 2 Negate, counter target non-creature spell for 2 mana. Non-creature spell is very, very powerful right now. It's important that you win the super long games that with the decks that are really good at grinding. And No More Lies is 2 mana instant, counter target spell unless controller pays 3. It's a mana leak effect. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. So that's our counter spell suite and our instant speed removal suite. As far as some board wipes, we have Temporary Lockdown. Temporary Lockdown is a 3 mana enchantment. When it enters, exile each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less until Temporary Lockdown leaves the battlefield. Very good against the super aggressive decks, and pretty good against the self-bound decks as well. Stock Up is our primary card advantage. It isn't our only card advantage, but it's our primary one. It's a 3 mana sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. Put 2 of them in your hand, and the rest at the bottom of your library in any order. 3 mana and it being a sorcery is kind of big, but having crazy card selection and 1 card replacing itself with 2 cards is literal advantage, and we get to select what cards we want. Stock Up is probably the best card advantage engine in Standard at the moment. We're also playing 3 Beza in the main deck and 1 in the board. Beza is an incredibly good controlling and mid-range card. It's a 4 mana 4/5. When it enters, create a treasure token. If an opponent controls more lands than you, gain 4 life if an opponent has more life than you. Create 2 1/1 blue fresh creature tokens if opponent controls more creatures than you. Draw a card if opponent has more cards in hand than you. So it's a great catch-up card. It's a great card that can stabilize the board kind of by itself, gain you a little bit of life, give you a little bit more time and life and blockers, draw some cards, whatever. And that's kind of the name of the game. We're playing 3 Day of Judgment, 4 mana, destroy all creatures. This has additional board wipes. And we're playing 4 Jace Perfected Mind. This is another one of our card advantage engines, and it's a win condition as well. Actually, it fills both of those roles. It's a 4 mana planeswalker with 1 of the blue mana being Phyrexian mana, which means you can pay 2 life instead of that mana, and it'll enter with 2 less loyalty. We get +1 until your next turn. Up to 1 target creature gets -3, -0. Pretty good if your opponent has only 1 threat. It's a -2 as target player mills 3 cards. Then if a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, you draw 3 cards. Otherwise, you draw a card. So that's the card advantage here, and crazy card advantage as the game goes really long, which happens all the time. And it's -X as target player mills 3 times X cards, which very often after you've controlled the board, maybe they're answering your threats and stuff like that, you can just go 4 mana, mill 15 cards, and sometimes that can win you the game, especially if you've gone through a Jace or two before and milled 3 cards here or there and had like a super long game. Sunfall is our last board wipe. It's 5 mana, not 4 mana. However, we exile all the creatures and we incubate X, so it can create a threat in and of itself, but 5 mana and 4 mana, that's a large jump. We're playing 4 Ride's End, which is a 5 mana instant that exile target creature or vehicle. However, it costs 3 less to cast if it targets a tap permanent. Very good against the aggressive decks, especially since exile removal is so important. Playing a single Horn-Locked Whale, which is on the adventure side, a 2 mana instant. Lagoon Breach. The owner of target attacking creature you don't control puts it on their choice of top or bottom of their library. So decent way to have temporary removal and then also buy you some time. And it is a 6 mana Flash War 2. Hornlock Whale enters tapped unless it's your turn. Pretty decent threat and pseudo removal in 1 card, and both are at instant speed, which we love. And then we're playing 2 Overlord of the Mistmoors. Overlord of the Mistmoors is a 7 mana avatar. When it enters or attacks, create 2 2/1 white insect creature tokens with flying, and we can impend it for 4 mana. This is one of our major threats, the way we end the game. Very good against these mid-range decks and actually self-bounce decks as well. After we've stabilized, or if we need blockers, we just play Overlord of the Mistmoors and we can just win. As far as the sideboard goes, Devout Decree. It's a 2 mana sorcery, exile target creature or planeswalker that's black or red. Scry 1, decent against like the pixie decks, really good against the red decks. You know, like we kind of love this card. I love that it hits Kaido, which is really nice, and Scrying, so we can get some card selection, is also important. Playing 2 Rest in Peace for that graveyard hate. We've already talked about Beza and Overlord and Negate, so we're kind of just like finishing out play sets and adding additional cards with our sideboard. What's cool is we have this card selection with stock up, so like that main deck kind of splitting up a bunch of cards that might be sideboard cards is actually totally fine. We're playing 3 Tishana's Tidebinder for those enter the battlefield effects, so 3 mana 2/3 with flash. When Tishana's Tidebinder enters, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. If an ability of an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities for as long as Tishana's Tidebinder remains on the battlefield. Which means it gives us a threat that's instant speed, also stops abilities from being triggered and things like that. Obstinate Baloth and Whitley Fleege kind of go into a similar category. And I realize Obstinate Baloth is green, but let me explain. Obstinate Baloth is a 4 mana 4/4. When it enters, you gain 4 life. If a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard Obstinate Baloth, put it onto the battlefield instead of putting it into your graveyard. And then Whitley Fleege is another 4 mana 4/4. Green creatures get +1/+1, white creatures get +1/+1, and it has that discard ability as well. We're siding this in against the bounce decks because Hopeless Nightmare tears our deck apart. And if we have Obstinate Baloth and Whitley Fleege, Obstinate Baloth is a little bit better than Whitley Fleege if we can have the Hopeless Nightmare thing happen, because gaining 4 life is just so powerful. And so we side these in against those decks, essentially because we can just win the game if we have that in hand and they Hopeless Nightmare us. Cool additional thing about Whitley Fleege too is it pumps up all of our white creatures and the tokens from the insects and stuff like that as well. Then we're playing 2 Dissection Tools, a 5 mana artifact. When Dissection Tools enters, manifest Dread, then attach Dissection Tools to that creature. Equip your creature gets +2/+2 as Death Touch and Lifelink, and we equipped it by sacrificing a creature. This can kind of slam the door on aggressive decks and stuff like that. Death Touch and Lifelink is just so powerful. But there you have the blue-white control deck in standard. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.